welcome or welcome back to my channel. Today is an exciting day. You will not be watching this, but today is my birthday and I have like an hour right now, or really I've had the whole day. It's been a very quiet birthday, but I've been very sick these past few days and I've been wanting to film this video since obviously the beginning of the month. This is my January wrap up, but I got sick and then I was traveling before I got sick, so this is really the first opportunity I've had to sit and talk about all of the books that I read and loved in January. Okay, the first book that I read and the first book that I finished in January was The Winners by Fredrik Backman, and I have more conclusive thoughts in that video and I guess more detailed thoughts in that reading vlog that I did in the end of December or possibly the beginning of January. And I didn't finish it in 2024, I finished it early in 2025, but I really loved this book. If you don't know, Bear Town and that entire trilogy is one of my favorite book series, if not my favorite book series that I've ever read. And Fredrik Backman is just one of those authors to me that I just love so much. I will read anything that he writes, and I love the way that his characters are so fleshed out. I can't really explain too much what happened in this book without spoiling it, and so I won't. But what I can say is if I had to give this one a rating, I would rate it, I think 4.5 or 4.75. I so badly wanted it to be a 5-star read, and I don't know, I think this series as a whole obviously is like, it has surpassed 5 stars. It's like a 6-star read for me, and I will recommend it always. I just do feel like this one dragged a bit, and some of the emotional impact that I thought we could have gotten from the end of this book was stolen by us, or stolen from us by Fredrik Backman, by telling us so early in the book about something really devastating that was going to happen. And so throughout the entire book I just felt this heaviness and anxiety about what was going to happen and about the character. This is an excellent book and it really brought a lot of emotions out for me, and I just recommend anything by Fredrik Backman so highly. So I don't want it to be taken that I didn't love this book. I really did, and it broke me. I was so scared to pick this book up for a really long time, and then I finally did it. But yeah, Fredrik Backman can do no wrong. I just do feel like this one missed in very minute, nitpicky ways. The next book that I read, I do believe, was Four Aunties and a Wedding by Jessie Q. Sutanto. This is the sequel to Dial A for Aunties, and I really loved Dial A for Aunties. It's a cozy mystery about this girl who gets into some trouble on a date and she kills the date that she's on, and she calls her aunts to come and help her clear it up. And in this one, she, or the girl from the initial story, she's getting married, and the wedding planners that her aunts choose for her are actually members of the mafia. And so it was really funny, it was entertaining. I have to check Goodreads to see what I rated it. Okay, I didn't give it a rating. I don't always rate all of my books. I have to feel generally strong, or like, yeah, I have to feel strongly about it to rate it most of the time, or be like very conclusive. This was a 3-star, 3.5. I must like really know what the rating is to really care enough to give it a rating. But I know for recommendation purposes, it's always very helpful to have a rating. So if I had to rate it, I would give it 3.5. Yeah, I'd give it 3.5. I liked it. It was very predictable, but it was a fun time. Okay, so in my notes app where I write down all of my thoughts, I have oh no. Maddie's inner dialogue is more often than not very annoying. Okay. Writing feels juvenile. The moral of the story isn't subtle and is over explained to us like we're children. The jokes fall flat, constantly repeated as well. Those were some of my qualms with it. And my big pro that I have written down, the aunties bring it back every time. The aunties are definitely the star of the show. I find myself loving them and laughing and really relating to that kind of family dynamic. And so, yeah, I would recommend it. The next book, oh my god, this is my favorite book that I read this month, and that's an insane thing to say. The same month that I read The Winners by Frederick Lockman. So this one I loved it so much, and that is Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. This was my first Hannah Bonham Young book that I've ever read, and I just picked it up honestly because one day I was scrolling on Goodreads and I saw that there was the sequel coming out, and I'd heard about Out on a Limb, but I hadn't really paid attention to anything about it. And so when I saw that the second book was coming out, I was like, okay, maybe I should read the first one and see what it's about, because I saw that the second book, the cover was really cute, one, and two, the storyline, I think it's second chance romance. That is my favorite thing ever. So I wanted to read the second one, but I wanted to read the first one first to see if it was really worth it. Was it ever? It was so good. It was so good. Out on a Limb is about unplanned pregnancy, and that's it. I actually will not be telling you what it's about. Just trust me. It was so good, so emotional, but also so funny. And I know that my thoughts on this are very like specific, so I will kind of read some of them. Giggle and kicking my feet immediately. This is probably 3% in. The first like 5 chapters of this book was so cute, like the perfect start to a rom-com ever. It was so good, so cute. The playlist on Spotify has to be the best book playlist I've ever listened to. It's perfect. This I do agree with, and I actually forgot, which is why it's so important for me to write notes, because I do not have a great memory. The playlist for this, I will link it in the description. It was so good, so perfect. Some of the songs were just timed to perfection. Oh, I rated it 5 stars, obviously. So, yeah. I also do feel like what Hannah Bonham Young did so well with this book was that this does kind of discuss, well, not kind of, it does follow two characters who have disabilities. So, I can't remember either of their names, but the female main character has an underdeveloped hand, and the main male character has, I think, he had one of his legs amputated, if I remember correctly, and it did a really good job at exploring them and their character and who they are because of those disabilities, but also exploring who they are outside of their disability. And I think it's really important in stories like this to discuss people's trials and their insecurities and their lives and their character outside of just this one ailment that obviously is a part of the story, but it isn't like everything. It isn't all that they are, and I thought that she did a really good job at making them very human and very whole, despite those what they might see as like issues that they have with themselves. And so yeah, I thought it was really, really, really masterful rom-com kind of situation with this book, and I loved it so much. The next book that I have on this list is The Wedding Party, and I didn't read this one physically. I read it, well, I listened to it on audiobook, and so I don't really have a lot of comprehensive thoughts. I kind of just laid down and played my game on my iPad one day and blew through it, and it was really entertaining. And it has to do with a murder mystery at a joint bachelor and bachelorette party for these very like high society, not high society per se, but like rich couple. And it was entertaining. There were definitely parts of it that were really, really annoying. That is actually all I have. I have entertaining. I love a wedding-esque whodunit mystery. The audiobook eats and talks too much about her dad, but otherwise I'm enjoying it. It wasn't like ball busting, thrilling or crazy, and it wasn't really that mind blowing and twisty either, but it was fun, classic mystery, and it was a good time. I think I rated that one 3.5 stars. If I'm not, I rated it 4 on Goodreads, but it's not a 4, it's a 3.5 stars. The next book that I read was a book, well, the next 2 books that I read were 2 books that I read for a reading vlog that I really, really, really wanted to have up for my birthday, but it just did not end up working out. It's just so sad because I really, really loved that video idea. But the first book was Tuesdays with Morrie by Mitch Albom. I had a lot of thoughts about this. I was also extremely emotional at the beginning of this book reading it, because this book follows a student and a teacher who, the teacher is now at a stage in his life where he is diagnosed with ACL and he's dying, and he knows that he is. Reading this book made me realize that I do not interact with death and the idea of death very often, which is obviously a good thing, but it really made me realize it, because I don't know, it made me feel like I was confronting grief in a really strange way, because obviously I don't know the based on that, and what obviously it was based on a true story, if anybody knows about this story. But I don't know, it made me feel a lot of different things, and I can't say that I enjoyed it either. I feel like I enjoyed it just as much as I enjoy a slap to the face. Like it was a huge reality check in a lot of ways, where this man who's dying and still living so positively is just trying to teach you how to live life to the fullest and how to take advantage of where you are, and not to let little things bother you, and to go out and dance and live and run while you can. And it definitely made me feel a lot, and yeah, I have a lot of complicated feelings about this book. And I didn't give it a rating because 1, it's based on somebody's true life story, and 2, I just have absolutely no idea how to rate this type of book. So the next book that I read was The Paris Library, and this book I rated, I think, 4 stars. I really, really, really love this one. It's a historical fiction about German occupied France, and it's told from the perspective of, well, from 2 perspectives. So the first perspective is a librarian in the American Paris Library during this time, as well as all of her other co-workers. So there are other perspectives sprinkled into that timeline. And then in the present timeline, we get this librarian who's now moved to America, and she has befriended a neighbor who is a young girl, and the young girl is really fascinated by this French woman who's so mysterious, and we're kind of seeing her uncover the story of the French librarian, and at the same time we're uncovering her story and how she ended up there, and her love life and her family life and all the things that happened, and it's all told through like the medium of books. And one thing that I really loved was the point of view of, oh my gosh, I can't remember her name. There were quotes from different books that were applicable to the narrative. They were like sprinkled throughout the book, and it feels like, oh, Odile, that was the um librarian's name. I really loved being in her perspective. The character and her narrative voice are super aligned, and I loved since the very beginning that she kept talking in Dewey Decimal points, which is so random, but it does feel like her. I do feel like she thinks in Dewey Decimal. So when she thinks of a specific book, she thinks, okay, yeah, this is where this is classified 634, or when she is like faced with a specific situation, so hard times, she thinks about it, she thinks about the book and where it would be placed in the Dewey Decimal System. And I just thought that was so entertaining. It was a nice tool to make us feel like we were really inside of her head. I do feel like the plot is just following her story during the war, before the war, after the war, and kind of showing us the power of reading and books and keeping it alive, because that was kind of the entire purpose of the past timeline, that the workers in the library were insistent on keeping the library open during that period of time, and how important it was to the people who were dependent on books as escapism and as a way to feel like they weren't going through what they were going through at the time. And it was really beautiful. It was a really beautiful book. Yeah, and my last point that I have about this, it highlights the intricacies of war, and it really shows you that everything is not so black and white. And I think that's a really important thing to address, especially in stories about war and really difficult times, because it can feel so hard to, or actually so easy to judge from the outside in war stories, and saying, okay, well, you chose the wrong side, or you want the wrong side of history. But when you're actually in it, you don't know how you would respond, how you would deal with your brother being taken away, or falling in love with somebody who is just trying to follow what they think is the law. And it does make you really question your, not, it doesn't make you question your morals, but it makes you open your mind a little bit more to different types of stories and different types of experiences, which I really enjoyed reading about. The next one I won't talk about too long because I don't have a lot to say. This was just one of my guilty pleasure fun books of this month. And I say guilty pleasure because this book was very obviously under edited, and in the first, I would say, 100 pages of this, I had a lot of issues with the editing. I feel very strongly about editing in books. Like, there's no way this book got published without somebody going through and editing it. So I just felt like there was a lot of careless mistakes in the grammar and the spelling and the consistency of the writing in the first quarter of this book, and that really bothered me, and it really takes me out of the story every time I am faced with it. But the plot of this was so funny and so fun, and I had a really good time. I even told my mom to read it, and she really enjoyed it, because Anna is just a chaos queen, and I loved it. This book follows Anna, who is very type A, and she always makes a bunch of lists and blah blah blah. She has a list of things that she absolutely will not accept in a partner, and she's at that stage in her life where she feels like she should be married, and or at least on the way there, and she's not. So she says, okay, I'm throwing away my list and I will create my perfect person. And so she finds one romantic, one who loves art, one who's rich, one who is something else. So like the things that she had on her list, she found people who have those traits, and she said, okay, I'll date them all and I'll just make my perfect man. Was this a disaster? Yes, obviously it was an absolute disaster. but it was so funny, so entertaining, and there was actually a romance that ensued, and I thought it was so cute. I loved it. I loved who she ended up with, and yeah, it was just funny. It was a good time. I think I rated it 4 stars. That I do not regret. I don't care about the editing anymore. It was just so funny, so entertaining. I'm sorry, it's just always funny to read back my thoughts on my notes app. I have 3 singular points on this book: lacks editing, the FMC lacks emotional intelligence and maturity, had so much fun. That's crazy. Next book that I read was The Vacationers by Emma Straub. I obviously was in a very heavy physical TBR mood this month. I usually read most of my books on my phone or my iPad, so on Kindle. But this month I just wanted to hold books. I could not be bothered to read on my phone this month, and so a lot of these books are, I have living proof of them, which is always nice. So I got this book randomly. I loved the cover. I thought it was cute and simple, and it sounded like it would be good drama. This one follows a family who go on vacation, meet up from a couple different corners of the world, and their secrets and drama. And that's literally the entire plot of the book. So I don't know. I finished it. I don't know. Was it boring at times? Definitely. Was it as juicy as I wanted it to be? No. I could get behind stories like this when the characters are at least semi likable. Even if they're messy, I could like a messy character. But an unlikable messy character, I cannot like. A family of messy unlikable characters, I can't get behind. I really can't. So this was it wasn't a bad read by any means. It entertained me enough, but I did enjoy the writing though. Yeah, I think I rated that one 3 stars. Would I recommend it? If you have it, and if one day you're really bored, or you're on a train or on the beach and you just want something to pass the time. It was pretty fast paced, medium paced, and good enough to get through. I didn't DNF it, so yeah. The next one I read was Betting on You by Lynn Painter, and I have a lot of thoughts on this one, which I don't know. This was my treadmill book of like one of the week, and I really enjoyed it. I think I rated it probably 3.75 if I had to guess. Let me check. Okay. 3.8, whatever. Yeah, I liked this one, and I thought it was very, very fast paced, very entertaining. I loved both the female main character and the male main character, and I loved the little romance or rom-com scenarios that they were put in. I thought it was fun. This is not an enemies to lovers, but they met one time on a plane and they didn't really like each other, and then later they end up being co-workers, and they bet that girls and boys can't be friends. So obviously I guess they both lost the bet because they fell in love. So yeah, I did find that it was really cute. I was giggling a lot in the first like 1/4 of this book. This is what I had my issue with. Too many Taylor Swift and obvious reader girl baits. So at some point in this book, I literally had to Google. I flipped to the back to see if a picture of Lynn Painter was there, but there wasn't a picture of her. So I had to Google what she looks like. And at first, I thought that maybe she's 21 and she's just a really young author. And she is kind of part of the demographic of people who are on like BookTube and BookTok and who really love Taylor Swift and you know what I mean. So I just felt as though maybe she fell into that demographic and that's just what she's writing about because it feels relatable to her. But then I realized that she was an older, I would say like middle aged um, woman. And so it did feel like she just went on BookTube and kind of made an archetype girl out of those BookTube girls and didn't give her a lot of personality outside of that. So I do feel like there were a lot of traits in our female main character that were specifically placed to, I wouldn't say manipulate because that's such a strong word, but to specifically relate to the demographic that she's trying to reach, but not to really breathe life into the character specifically. And that really bothered me because I want characters that feel very real. And even though they do feel real, because I see a lot of girls like that, and I do relate to her in some ways because obviously I do love reading. I love Taylor Swift, and I am very neurotic sometimes and anxious, and I overthink a lot. And I understand to a certain extent, but there's so much more depth to a person, and yeah, there's so much more depth to a person than what they like and what they enjoy and their hobbies and things that other people could enjoy about them or that they could share with other people. And so I felt like Lynn Painter did her, the character, a disservice by making her so palatable to people like us, like the BookTube and Book Talk girls. So yeah, I really did, I did find myself having a problem with that because I felt like it was just TikTok references. Like I was just scrolling through TikTok and saying, oh my gosh, that's so me, that's so me. You know, I don't know if I'm explaining it correctly, but I did, that bothered me. And I do hope that going forward, Lynn Painter creates more genuine and authentic and deep characters. I had some problems with it, but generally I really enjoyed it. It was a perfect treadmill read. Every single day I was like, oh my god, I can't wait to go on the treadmill and finish my book. So yeah, it was a fun time. I definitely recommend it. Okay, and the last book that I finished in January was on my flight, or I think I finished it after my flight. So my first day in Miami last week. No. Sky in the Deep by Adrienne Young, who is the author of The Unmaking of June Farrow. This is a young adult. Is it fantasy? I can't say. I don't know if I would really classify it as fantasy. War fiction, yes. So this follows a girl, Ellen, who is a part of this clan who has like this blood rivalry with another clan. And I think the fantastical element of this is a religion. So there are two gods who have always been at odds and they have like this rivalry. So obviously the people that follow them each have a rivalry with each other, and every few years they have this battle, and or like fighting season is what they call it. And it's just a lot of like religious and spiritual elements in it, and how serious the clansmen take their religion and stuff. I think that might be the fantastical element, but I don't love fae fantasy and stuff like that. So this amount of fantasy was fun to me. I didn't feel underwhelmed by the lack of magic or creatures or anything like that. So I'm just saying that because I know some people when they hear fantasy they go, oh my gosh, fae or fairies or goblins and stuff, and that is not what you will get here. But during fighting season, Ellen sees her brother, and the odd thing is that her brother died during the last fighting season 5 years ago, and she saw him die. And so when she sees him fighting for the other clan, she's like, what is happening right now? Did you literally betray me, our family, and our entire clan and our religion? And So she follows him, and I don't want to say anything else. That's all. It just is a story about love and family and finding your way and making amends and kind of meeting people where they are sometimes, and unconditional love in a situation where you feel like you're at complete odds. It Yeah, I really really like this book. I do feel like this might be my second favorite book that I read this month after Out on a Limb. I loved it. Once I got into it and once I got connected to the characters, I really loved this. I thought the romance was so good. It was just enough. It wasn't too much, but it was just enough, and I really enjoyed that. I wrote, because while I was on the plane, I was listening to Folklore and Evermore, and those are just so perfectly the albums for this book. So good. It was so good. And I did write in the beginning, Alexa, play Peace by Taylor Swift, because it was just so good. There was such like cute little quotes, and I I I definitely highly recommend. Let me see what Past Me was thinking. I'm really hooked now. I love the couple. This whole story feels so fragile and tender. I don't even know, even though there's a lot of violence and war and bloodshed. Okay, so when I wrote that, I was getting to the part where I felt like the main male character and the female male character started opening up to each other and trying to see the other person's perspective a little bit more, and I just thought it was so tender. It felt like if I even breathe, they would stop. Like, because it just is such a high stakes situation to them, because their clans are so integral and so deep rooted in them. So trying to make peace and trying to hold back the love that you find yourself developing for somebody in a different clan with a completely different way of life and God and understanding was just so, it felt so sacred, and like if you even, it would be gone, like the moment would be gone. And it was just, it had moments of high intensity and moments of like real true emotional intimacy, which I haven't seen in a book in so long. And so I really loved this book. So I do recommend it. It wasn't quite 5 stars, even though I find myself getting goosebumps right now talking about it, because I really loved it. But I would say 4.5, maybe 4.75. But yeah, those are all of the books that I read in January. I finished one since the beginning of February, but we'll talk about that at the end of February, obviously. So thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video, which I think is a weekly vlog of this week actually. So yeah, thank you for watching. I will see you next time.